welcome back to the show. You don't need a change in the calendar to start eating healthy. It can be a push. You want to do better for your body. But how do you choose the best diet to go with? There are many out there. And there's also a lot of misinformation. But that's why we're bringing in our friend Shanti from Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan to help us with the best diets of 2024. Hey, Shanti.
Hello.
So, the annual report of the best diets of the previous year came out. What are we looking at?
Yeah, so the US News and World Report does this report every single year, and they gather a panel of experts from doctors to dietitians, everyone that kind of has a leg in this field, and they determine the best diets. And they evaluated 38 diets this year.
Wow.
And I can go over the top three a little bit, but what they all have in common is that they're not about quick weight loss. And that's because they're also sustainable. So it's something that people can do for a long time. It provides you with the nutrients that you need, and they're also preventive of a lot of health conditions. So that's what I want to preface this with, but they do a lot of work to form this list.
And something that was very trendy over the past year was versions of what many people consider a magic bullet, but I love the diet approach because there is no magic bullet. It takes dedication and hard work and a change of lifestyle. So
It sure does.
let's jump into those top three. What are we looking at?
Yeah. Well, not a surprise here. The top two have been the same for years and years and years. The Mediterranean diet and the DASH diet. Now, the two of them aren't very different. So, plenty of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, nuts, healthy fats, fish, and poultry, and not so much on the sweets and the processed and red meat. Now, the DASH diet came in second, and they also have a focus on limiting the saturated fats, limiting added sugar, and also, of course, being mindful of sodium intake, because the DASH diet does stand for Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension. So that
Oh,
DASH diet is focused on heart health. Now the third,
interesting.
now the third one on this list I thought was really interesting, because it's something that we're seeing kind of a move towards for kind of humanitarian reasons and for climatarian reasons and all of things in between. And it's the flexitarian diet. So
Hmm.
this is very much in line with a vegetarian lifestyle, but it doesn't cut out meat altogether, right? So you're really focusing on the bulk of your protein intake from things like nuts and legumes, tofu, things like that. But you're not over consuming animal products. You're, eating some red meat here and there, poultry here and there.
So something that recently came out, I want to say from CBS Mornings, is
Yeah.
their registered dietitian. Every year, she comes out with 5 foods that we didn't think are ultra processed, but are, and therefore not really as healthy for us. One thing that she pointed out that has to do with both these diets is the meat alternatives that are out
Yes.
there. So could you just help us kind of demystify this? Are they bad for us? Are they overprocessed and therefore not as good as eating regular meat or going through legumes and nuts to get your protein?
Yeah, so when we see these meat alternatives on the shelves, they're not all made the same. And so sometimes there can be plenty of great options of things like veggie burgers that are mostly made up of things like beans, chickpeas, things like that. Now, those are great options. Now, on the flip side, there are those really ultra processed things. And it's great that you mentioned that, because the flexitarian diet does highlight that we shouldn't be eating too many ultra processed foods. And they're saying, hey, you know, just because something says plant-based doesn't mean that you should be eating it just because this is mostly a plant-based diet because of that ultra processed aspect. So it comes down to looking at those lists. Usually those meats that have um, basically the ground meat substitute in the plant world are those ultra processed foods. So that's a great point.
Gotcha. Interesting. Is there anything that the viewers at home could specifically be on the lookout for when trying to follow a diet in the new year? It can be tricky to read every ingredient on every label
Yeah.
of everything you want to buy. But are there specific things that if they're scanning, that if you see it on there, try to stay clear?
Yeah, so things that are heavy in saturated fat. So if we see any kind of tricky words that are related to fat, those are probably something you want to stay away from.
Gotcha.
Another thing is all things that sound like sugar at at the top of the list. So the ingredient list on a nutrition facts label is deemed by how much is in the or in amounts of that food, right? So if it's at the top of the list, there's more of that ingredient in that food. So we want to steer clear of sugar. Now, I think it's also important to think about what we can add to our diet because I think a lot of times we're just focusing about, what can we take away? What should we
Mm-hmm.
not be eating? But let's focus on what we should be eating, right? Fiber is something that is so important for our overall health. It's incredibly important for bowel health, to prevent certain cancers, to prevent diabetes, heart disease, things like that. It helps keep you fuller longer. So it's great for weight management. So we want to eat things like barley and oats. We want to eat things like beans and lentils that, of course, also have protein, but are really rich in fiber as well. So fiber is something that we don't get enough of. That's something we should focus on every day to get more of.
Now, before we wrap up today, Shanti, where can someone go to potentially look at this breakdown of effective diets, but also get more information from you on healthy recipes that they can make at home?
Yeah, healthiermichigan.org is a great resource for those recipes. And you want to go to US News and World Report for the best diet list. What's great about it is that they kind of list out the do's and don'ts. They also talk about 21 diets that are specific for a certain health condition. So, for
Oh,
example, if have a certain health condition where you might struggle with your gut health or you have diverticulitis or arthritis, things like that, they evaluate those best diets there.
that is incredibly impressive. And I'm sure a lot of people who have those one issues but don't want to change everything about their lifestyle will
Yeah.
appreciate that approach. Shanti, always a pleasure. And we're going to make sure all the links that our viewers need to check out the best diets of 2024, it's all going to be available after the show today over on our website, 9and10news.com. Shanti, again, always a pleasure, and we'll see you again next week.